Welcome to the High Pressure Podcast with me, George Rotterman.
And me, Marie Williams. Brought to you by Reliably Ratterman.
Bringing you industry news and trends.
Plus, insightful conversations with industry leaders.
Let's get to today's show.
And let's move on to Ratterman at AIWD and IWDC. Steve, I know those events are happening currently and to come. Do you want to touch on what people can expect from us?
Sure. We actually just completed AIWD today. I think our team flew home today, and we had Devin, who's our Northeast account manager, and we also had Chad, who is our Midwest account manager. And they represented us at the booth, and it's a great buying group. We've got a great group of folks in there, and you know, in true Rotterman style, we always attend these events and show up with a little bit of a bang, so to speak. And I think we were consistent with our GATA theme. We had our Dolly theme booth with our new hours that were open 7 to 8 Eastern time. So AIWD was a great event. IWDC is coming up. That's right around the corner. And attending the AIWD, we've got the IWDC, we've got a little bit of a larger group. We've got Craig, who's our national sales manager for industrial products. We've got Greg, and then we've got Devin and Heather. So we'll have a good showing there as well. And the IWDC is always a fantastic group and a great group of customers. And, you know, we love our customers. So it's very important for us to participate in these buying groups and show our our participation and support.
And continuing on with conventions that we'll be at, or industry shows, is the GATA annual convention in Phoenix in October. Steve and Brent, should we talk about what we're going to be doing there? Brent, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we never want to unveil everything that we have planned, but I think that our entire team does a really good job of making sure that we've got an event that people want to participate in, something that really engages everyone, and again, to Steve's point, really shows our appreciation for our customers. And I'm really looking forward to the event that you guys have got planned, because I think it'll be a really exciting.
Yeah, I think Scottsdale or Phoenix, I guess we're in Phoenix at the JW Marriott. It's a newly renovated hotel. Wonderful facilities, and all I'll say is they've got a very, very nice pool out there. And you know how George is with Hawaiian shirts, and let's hope he keeps his Speedo at home and we'll be in good shape.
Absolutely. I will pray for that nightly. I also want to say that, these events that we throw for customers are truly to show our appreciation and just give everyone a moment to relax and enjoy and get together as friends, not just peers and coworkers. So, or customers and vendors. So we're looking forward to hosting everyone, and we'll unveil what that is in the next episode.
I think you make a great point, Marie, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, but they are customer appreciation events, and they're titled as such, not just for the sake of having a title, but they are truly a customer appreciation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When I look at the people there, like I think you were talking about the many years that Brett and I and your father have been in this business. It's been a long time, but you look, us, all of us coming from an independent distributor network. Most of these distributors are our friends. They've been our friends for years. So it's really an opportunity to get together, see our friends, and stay in touch, get reconnected, and like most friends, we are in the same business. So most of us do business together. And we really appreciate the support of our friends and customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. Regardless of, what your circle of friends is, you never get to spend enough time with one another, right? So that's why we want to make sure it's quality time that we get to spend with everybody at one of these events.
Right. And I know when George first hired me on as doing the events at Ratterman, his rule was no stuffy dinners and no stuffy events. It should just feel like someone is coming into your backyard and you're able to have a good time with them. So that's what we want to offer to you, and just say thank you as much as we can. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you all there. Let's talk about the Solution Center in Livermore, California. Steve, I'm going to turn this over to you first. Brent's currently sitting in it, so he would be a great person to fill in afterwards. But Steve, what can people experience when they go to the Solution Center?
Well, that's a tough question. Anybody who knows George, right? That facility is, I think, probably been a lifelong dream of his. And our solution center, not only is it an environment in which we can share with our customers the solutions we provide, but it's a wonderful conference facility. We have meeting space there. We have rooms that provoke thought and discussion. And there's a tremendous amount of thought that has been put into the Solution Center. For any of our West Coast customers, we've actually offered up our Solution Center for you to use your, the conference facilities for meetings and the like. And also we've had events where we bring our customers into our Solution Center to meet about current business topics or projects that we're working on together. So we love to get customers into our Solution Center, and that's in the San Francisco Bay Area. So if any of you have any interest in visiting us, George always likes to see people. Brent does. I have an office out there. I'm there a little bit. Melissa, who's our finance lead, is based there at the Solution Center as well. So it's a great place and a great trip if you're ever in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Absolutely. And, from the folks I think that have had the opportunity to visit the Solution Center, well, first of all, to your point, Steve, I can't think of anybody other than George Rotterman that could create a facility quite like this one. It provokes thought, engagement. It's a breath of fresh air when you walk in the door. It's not like any other environment or office environment that, at least that I've ever been accustomed to or been in. It's a testament really to everything. I think, to your point, Steve, that George has probably envisioned for a very, very long time, and seeing it come to fruition is just it's been beyond satisfying, at least from my aspect anyway. But again, Steve, to your point, we plan on hosting events out here for our customers. We would love to have anybody that's out on the West Coast visit this facility, because I cannot do it justice trying to describe it either. It's something that definitely has to be seen, and I think it's definitely worthy of the trip out.
Well, and don't forget, our East Coast customers love the West Coast in wintertime. So you're all welcome in December, January, February, March. And wine country is very close. And also, don't forget to ask, and if George is there, we will not omit it. We actually have a speakeasy in our Solution Center.
Oh, you gave up the secret, Steve.
Well, it is the 30. It is the 32 Club, and I'm not going to tell anybody what the 32 Club is. They're going to have to come visit and hear from George all about the 32 Club and what it takes to become a member.
Ooh, that's great. Yes, our doors are open to you, customers. If you want to bring out your team, if you just are here for a layover and need a place to work for a little bit, our doors are open to you. We would love to host you. So that's, again, something you can reach out to me for, marie@rmimfg.com. And the last of our update is Ratterman's Women's Roundtable is back, and we are excited for our virtual events for the private group that will be happening this year. But in addition, we are going to be hosting some in-person events, and those are open to all of Ratterman customers, including not just women, but also men. So look out for those invitations, and we hope to have you attend some of them. Welcome to this episode of High Pressure. It is just me today, Marie. Normally my co-host is George Ratterman, my father, but he is out for this week. We have some great guests with us today. We have Sherri and Lucas Iskra of Leonard Syrups. So welcome to the High Pressure Podcast, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. So I guess we'll give a little bit of a background of Leonard Syrup. So I was looking online, doing a little research, but you guys started in 1964, founded by Leonard Jr. and Leonard Sr. So Sherri, your grandfather and your father, Lucas, your grandfather and great-grandfather, correct?
Nailed it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And they started by selling soda pop.
They did.
Okay.
They did.
So, Sherri, would you want to touch on the progress that Leonard Syrups has made since then?
Of course, yes. So the way it all started, my grandfather worked for Verner's, which is a local soda pop here in Michigan. And he was their branch salesperson. And he kept telling his boss, the future is in bar and tavern. Like that's where it's going. It's not just bottle and can. And his boss kept saying, no, that's just a fad. It's never going to be in bars and taverns. And so my grandfather decided to leave and start his own company and live his dream. And he was correct. It really did go that direction. So he started it like maybe 6 months before my dad graduated college. Then my dad joined, and my dad's major was chemistry. So he was a chemist, and he decided to make his own flavors. And eventually we started to make our own soda, manufacture our own stuff. And
Wow.
that's how it all began.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so now you offer a ton of different services. Would you mind touching on what those are?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's one of the keys, as you know, in business is to diversify, diversify, diversify. So we started with just the soda, and then we went into the gases, the CO2 to start with. Then eventually we did service and install of all beverage equipment. So soda, beer systems, some liquor, some wine. From there, we kind of branched into not only installing the beer systems, but cleaning the lines. And now we clean beer lines. Then we decided, well, why not throw ice into there? So we decided to do ice machine installs and cleans and maintenance. And um, CO2 has been our biggest explosion, I guess you could call it. Because in the 90s, we decided to go from the canisters, the 20-pound canisters, places like McDonald's, they would go through so much CO2 that they were constantly having to change their cylinders. And as you know, the turnover at those restaurants is high, and it's hard to teach a young kid how to change those canisters, not necessarily super safe sometimes. So they were really interested in the constant carbonation of having bulk CO2. So we moved into bulk CO2 in the 90s, and that's been one of our biggest branches of Leonard's now is our CO2 division.
Oh, that's amazing. And Lucas, you're kind of heading up the cannabis division as well, right?
Yeah. So I do a lot of like general management, and I do a lot of sales, but definitely for our larger CO2 customers, which tend to be in the cannabis industry here in Michigan. Um, I do manage that team, and then also along with my brother, Mark. My brother's kind of the resident expert in the
Yeah.
cannabis industry itself, just based on he was in the business before I was. So when
Yeah.
marijuana became legal in Michigan um, in 2009, it really started to take off in about 2016 medically is when the grows really started to get organized and there started to be a big boom. And so that's when we entered the space. And Mark's been working here since 2018. So he was kind of here to head that up. So he's our cannabis expert. I kind of just handle large bulk, um,
Yeah.
which cannabis tends to fall in.
Yeah. That's so so Leonard Syrups is what, 60 years old now, which is
Six.
amazing.
This year.
Yeah. And I think the only way you could Yeah, that's incredible, and the only way you can really get there is to diversify and take those, like, big leaps of faith, so, um, props to your whole family for jumping in on that, and then also I was thinking about the fact that in the 1960s, um, in Detroit, it was a really interesting time because you had Motown going on, which love Motown, but you also had the 1960s. Isn't that when, the, like, collapse of the automobile industry was happening in Detroit?
In the yeah, that you're exactly right, Marie. Like 1967 was when there was a big uprising in the city of Detroit, um, a racial uprising. So there was a lot of tension in the city, and um, there was a huge riot, and the city kind of never recovered from that. And on top of that, in the early 70s with the oil crisis, the automotive industry really definitely suffered, and the city kind of never rebounded um, until recently. I'd say definitely after 2008, 2009, you start to see the economic reform that happened in the city. The city had to declare bankruptcy, and then they got out of their bankruptcy, and we really benefited from kind of the city's rising from being a mainstay here. We're kind of viewed as, we stuck it out in a way, especially because we've always operated in the city of Detroit within the city limits. A lot of businesses here are kind of in the suburbs, and they go into the city to do business and then go back out. and Leonard's is headquartered in Detroit and always has been. So that's really helped our reputation as the city's kind of up on the uprise right now. We're kind of viewed as one of those companies that never abandoned it, and it really carries well for our name and our reputation with our customers.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, yeah, because what a strong community to go through so many, dips and turns and stuff. Have either of you ever heard Leonard talk about stories from that time of like, I mean, what a wild time to start a business. Like, were there moments within that time that kind of led to different, things of that happened at Leonard's?
Sherri, your great grandpa might have talked about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I remember, I mean, he's told me so many stories, but I think he told me his scariest time was when he first started the company and they didn't have any money at all. So he was going to go to the bank and request a loan, but he had to walk to the bank. He didn't have a car. He walked to the bank and he said he had to request, I think he said $1,000. And he said his knees were shaking. And he said to the guy, I'm going to start my business. I promise it's going to be great. I'm going to do all these things. And for $1,000, literally his knees were shaking and he got the loan. He got it. I don't even know how, because I don't know what he had to put up for collateral. I don't think he had anything, but he said that was the best day and the scariest day of his entire life. And he told me that when he was like 90. So
Wow.
he's still thinking about that day when he went into the bank all by himself. And I think that's why he was just so kind and so good to everybody, because he always said, everybody in my life has always been so kind to me. And
Mhm.
the way he got to where he was so many people reaching out a hand and saying, I'll take a chance on you. I'll lend you this money. I will let you, whatever he needed. He always said he was just so blessed by so many people. And
Oh my gosh. That's aw and that was your grandfather or
that was
your
my
father?
grandfather. My grandfather.
Wow. Okay, and so, yeah, that's what a great way to, start a company and jump off of, like, for a value you wanna instill through all employees, so that's pretty incredible. So if that was your grandfather and obviously, he's coming from nothing, and so this is every part of his being is in building this company, right? And
Everything.
so I'm sure for your father joining that also became the same type of way of like, we're building this from nothing. So what has that been transitioning from generation to generation and you both getting more involved? Like I know Sherri, are you president or vice president?
Vice president.
Vice president. So building, going through the ranks there and getting to vice president, which is incredible. Um, what has there been like that same motivation for you or has that caused a little bit of like, you know, maybe the older generation wants to keep in the fire and keep things close to them and uh doesn't want to change, but you're like, no, we got to try new options and diversify. Has there been any of that with family business?
I think my answer would be different from Luke's, because for my father, I don't really remember my grandfather as far as technology and advancements, but my father is so into technology and always being on the cutting edge. So it's been great. Anything that I've ever wanted to do computer wise, when handheld computers first came out, our drivers were on handhelds in 1988, which is pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
he was just like, do it, do it. Everything's always been, if we can advance ourselves, if we can diversify into something, let's do it. Always jump in with both feet, So for me, it's been great. I haven't had a lot of challenges. I mean, of course, we're a family business. So what's the best part about owning a family business? Your family. What's the worst
Hmm.
part? Your family. So,
Yeah.
it's wonderful. It's great. But so there have been, of course, little bumps along the road, but it's been pretty easy, I think, for me, for our family to work together and be together all the time. Everyone's pretty much on the same page. There have
Yeah.
been times when we've been in a different book altogether, but we seem to come together and manage to bridge that. I don't know how Lucas feels about dealing with me now that I'm the older generation. I don't know how he feels about that.
Uh, it's tough to answer. Um, I think that, like Sherri said, I mean, we get along pretty well as a family in general. Work never really seems to intertwine, really. I mean, dinner conversations are always work. Christmas is always, someone's talking in the corner about work. Um, But there's definitely, I feel it, I think a little bit more than Sherri does. More because Sherri's doesn't have to ask anybody anymore, I think, is the main thing. And I'm asking for her help and her permissions. And I definitely feel like we keep stuff pretty close, in terms of outside hires, and how we handle our decision making is definitely very much controlled and very much within the family, and it's very close. And I would like to see, as we grow, especially at the point we're at now, we're kind of at it feels like at least kind of a tipping point for us where we need to kind of make a choice. Do we want to keep going, or do we want to, figure out how we can maintain the ship? And I think
Mhm.
that requires some outside help. And I think there's kind of a little bit, to be totally honest, that's a little bit where we have a little bit of a generational um, disagreement, I guess, is that I would say Sherri and my grandpa would rather keep things close, and my brother and I would like, hey, if we can get somebody to help us from the outside, why wouldn't we? And I think that's kind of
Mhm.
that's a really good example of saying that story about our about great grandpa, was that you know he started from nothing. He's not going to let somebody else come in here and control his baby, right? And that's kind of where Mark and I have a little bit of a different opinion. But we kind of have a middle ground. We just hired our first outside hire to our C-suite team, so an actual executive. First time we've given a person within Leonard's that title too. That's not family, and so far it's been really good. It's been a really good experience, and I think that's kind of dipping our toes by getting our first person hired. See how it goes, and as a family, I think we're really embracing it, and it's definitely critical to our next step as a business and as an organization. Um, just kind of adding a little bit of those higher level, more experienced people that in the past maybe we wouldn't have thought necessary to be on the team. So
Yeah. Yeah. Sherri, did you have something you wanted to say to that?
No, just that he's definitely right. I mean, I grew up where we started with, when I came here full time, we had like 12 employees. We have 120 now. So it's a
Wow.
way different environment. And when I first started, that's how it was. The family did everything. Like you
Mhm.
didn't, if there was a decision to be made, I was making it. My dad, my grandma, my grandpa, my mom, my brothers. Now it's not that way anymore. And it's
Mhm.
really hard for me to let that go. I'll be honest. That's why I said, ask Lucas. I know he has a way different opinion, but I'm trying really hard. I know it's time, but it's hard.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wish my dad was on this call because, um, I mean, he started Ratterman, and then about a year later, our president, Brent Lockhart came on, and they worked together at my dad's family's gas and supply company before he started Ratterman, since, like, they were, like, 19 or something, but so he's kinda like family, and everything's been, like, super close to the vest, and, like, just kind of decisions are made between the 2 of them, and, like, family like you're saying, Lucas, like, everyone on this podcast, when I talk about family, like best advice for working with your family, it's always don't talk about work when you get home. That is so difficult to do. Like it is so hard to do that. It's like borderline impossible. But anyways, a lot of like offhand conversations happen outside of work of new ideas, new decisions, and whatnot. And then when we're growing, and we've grown a lot in the past few years, now we're at the point where we have to step back and let certain people in key roles make those decisions and come to the table with those new ideas. And it's been really uncomfortable for George, not to speak for him, but he's been embracing it well. But it's been interesting to watch and learn from. So
Well,
yeah.
I'm with George. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy, especially like if like he started Ratterman, but like if you're watching your father or your grandfather start Leonard Syrups from nothing, it's your baby. You want to keep that going as much as you can. Um, okay, so I guess I'll ask the question since I ask everyone on that comes on about that's part of the family. What is your advice for working in a family business? Who wants to go first here?
I would say conflict resolution is so important in learning how to communicate. And you know how they always say, don't go to bed mad. Like, don't go
Yeah.
home mad if you can help it, and just communicate. It's all the same things, but it's just really hard because it's not with another person. It's Luke's my son at home, but when I come to work, he's my coworker. He's my, it's like you have to separate. And as you said, that's the hardest thing in the world to do. It's really, really hard. But if you can do it, it's great. I mean, learn how to let things go. Be kind all the time. You can say it in your head, but just try to be kind and communicate every little thing that might be bothering you before it becomes a big thing. I don't know, Luke, if you have anything.
Yeah, I mean, similar. I would say the key, as with family business, is almost no different than any other organization. But for family members specifically, it's the most crucial thing you can do for your business, your family within itself, and your team members is to communicate with each other. I think that's something that, as we've grown, we've learned kind of the hard way. Not necessarily that anything bad has happened, but we've definitely gotten into some arguments as a family just because one person's making a decision and it doesn't necessarily get communicated to the rest of the family. And then you have team members calling different family members and asking questions, and then everybody's confused and, well, who told you could do that? And then everybody's just kind of flustered and angry. So I think the best piece of advice is just to communicate with each other as family members. And like Sherri said, if you're able to kind of like compartmentalize almost in your brain, like you have the mom, like for me, I have mom side and work side. And, kind of naturally I called her Sherri because we're at work. But, that's kind of that's when I go home, I try to call her mom on purpose. Kind of helps me delineate. I'm not talking to my boss. I'm actually talking to my mom at this point. So, but that's my best piece of advice is just communicate within each other, within the family itself, with each other. I think it's crucial.
Yeah, that's great. I also do think like that's kind of like my dad and I's boundary. I've been calling him my dad on this podcast, but at work he's George, and then at home he's dad. And yeah, we do talk about work when we go home sometimes and at family events and stuff. But at least we know like I can always go to him and say, okay, I need like George or I need my dad right now, for different advice. So I think that's also a good point within that. But okay. And Sherri, you've been at the company for a long time, worked your way up. What have been some of your biggest learnings at Leonard Syrups? I guess that's pretty vague. That's like,
I mean, I honestly, I started coming here when I was 2. My mom would let my dad bring me here. I don't know why she let him do that because I just ran around the whole shop. I ran outside. I did whatever I wanted. But learning the entire business has been so key to me. Like I spent every summer washing tanks. I mean, thank goodness for the invention of bag-in-a-box because the Cornelius tanks went away because I don't know how many thousands and thousands of those that I've washed over the years. And then my dad had me cleaning the bathroom, sweeping the warehouse floor. Finally, I got to move to the office where I did filing, answering phones. Then I moved on to payables, receivables. Then I went to college for education. I was a 3rd grade teacher. And one summer, my dad said, "Hey, the controller quit. Can you just come in for a month?" Well, fast forward 35 years, a couple of accounting classes at the community college later, and I'm still here. So I've learned that I think it's really key to pretty much go through every department. I mean, I've gone out with service techs, I've gone out on a route, learn your whole business, learn what everybody does. And I think it just helps you run the business when you know what everybody's doing and what they're going through to do their job and how you can improve things. I mean, pretty much now I do regulatory and our HACCP stuff and our food safety and our IT projects, stuff like that. But if I had to jump in, I could do payables, I could do receivables. And I think it just makes you a better leader and a better manager when you know every part of your company.
yeah. And so advice to a young professional that isn't part of like the family of at the family business that they're working at, would that be to just ask to get involved with whatever is possible for them to get involved in?
I would say yes. I'd say put in the work. Put in the work every single day. Stay late if you can. I mean, put the effort in, and you will get noticed, and things will go well.
Yeah.
It's just all about you get out what you put in, and you have to work hard if you want something.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. Um, yeah, George had me starting There was no reason to sweep the warehouse, to be honest, because there was like a crew that came in, but that's like where he had to start was just sweeping the warehouse.
Yes.
So it wasn't very productive, but we did that.
That's it. We did the
But yeah,
same.
it
That's Sherry always had.
yeah.
It's same thing. Like we were always there when we were 6, 7 years old, and
Yeah.
when hopefully the Department of Labor doesn't listen, but when it's your mom, like, hey, go help, just put labels on boxes. We did that for hours in the summertime. I mean, just stood there and just
At least you got to glue boxes and not clean
Yeah.
tanks. You were lucky.
right. It's true. I didn't have to do anything sticky and gross, but it's
Yeah.
it's something that and then as you just get older, you start doing more things. And Mark and I drove trucks when we were 16. The summer we were 16, we were delivery people. And then when we started here full time, we did service and install for 6, 7 months each. And then that's at that point you're a year or two in, and it just helped. Like Sherry said, it helps you be a better leader. But especially when you understand your business from that granular of a level as a business owner plus a leader and a manager, it really gives you a different perspective as to how to run the business, how to make decisions better, and kind of like in Sherry's case, she does all the IT for all our handhelds, and if she didn't know how the service team operates in the field, you know how difficult that would be to set up a handheld for a service tech. Like it's a crucial. I think it's really important to do that. And the advice to the young person coming in, I think the most important thing in a family business is you do not have a job description. Like that's just the best way to put it. We try to do that with everybody we hire. Is like, okay, we're hiring you as a service tech, but we're going to probably ask you to do a lot of things outside of that. So like just being open-minded, especially at Leonard's, we really try to foster that. Like we're going to try to find what you're good at by making you do everything, and then seeing kind of where you like it the most, and we'll do our best to make sure you grow in that specific niche. But we try to let everybody see everything we do on purpose, and that way too we get extra help, and people aren't saying, well, I'm just a driver, I'm just a service tech. They're willing to do everything. I think that's very important advice for anybody working in a family business. Is just keep an open mind, and don't pigeonhole yourself, because being multifaceted is very important to a family business.
Has that shown to be productive for you? Like as far as like turnover goes and all that, like people prefer to work um at Leonard's knowing that they're not just pigeonholed versus another company?
I think so. And
Yeah.
just kind of the ability, the flexibility of a family business is insane, because you can, as a person, maybe where if you worked at a Coca-Cola, so to speak, or a large Fortune 500 company, maybe you're just a number. But at a family business, you're probably interacting with the highest level decision maker, so to speak, a family member on a day-to-day basis. So if you have something that's an idea, or you're not really liking what you're doing, we have everybody loves that cliche and open door policy, but like it's like I have people walk in my office all the time. I just had somebody try to come up here just now waving through my window, but it's like you can just come up here and ask me, and if you say, hey, I deliver soda now, but I'd really like to learn how to deliver CO2, that's great. As long as you're a valuable, productive team member, we want to keep those people. Not that we don't necessarily mind what specific task or job they do. We want to keep the person. And I think that our turnover has really shown that. I mean, we got people working here. There's 6 people that work here now that have worked at Leonard's longer than I've been alive, and are still planning to keep working here as long as they can. So, and we have plenty of others that are 15 plus years. I mean, maybe 20 to 30 that are 15 plus years here. So we really pride ourselves in being flexible to help keep good, talented people that understand our very niche business. Once they get the business, they can kind of do everything if you train them well enough.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's helped for sure. I don't know, Sherry, if you think so too. I mean, you have known these people, like I said, longer than I've been alive.
Definitely. Yeah. It's company culture. That's, that buzzword today, but it really does matter. The family creates that culture. How we are, that is the culture. And that's so important to us to keep that in a good way.
Yeah, and it's so cool that the culture started off of like, Leonard getting that loan and then him saying like, I'm going to give a helping hand anywhere I can to anyone, that wants it. So that's pretty amazing. I don't know about you, Lucas. Sherri, you explained that you were not planning on working at Leonard's. You went, into education. I was not planning on working at Ratterman at all. Like that was not on my bingo card at all. And I really think that I would have jumped around in a lot of big corporations to figure out what I wanted to do. And it was like such a like now looking back, I've been at Ratterman for 10 years and looking back, I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to work for a family company, even if it wasn't my family. Like I'm so happy I had the opportunity to work here because I've been able to express like, oh, I'm really interested in this. Is there space for me to jump in and learn in that department? And so that's very powerful. But yeah, I think we've talked before. You weren't planning on working at Leonard's, right?
No, I mean, kind of. It was always like, it's always that like storm cloud way far away. It was like, I like what I'm doing now, but Leonard's is there, and I know they could use the help, and it kind of just it was always there, but it was never really in the plans. After college, I did work for a large company, and it's so different, and it's like the corporate world exists in a totally different world than the real world, which is where like the family businesses are. And I think that that's kind of what
Mhm.
that culture, right? That's like, we're real people. Like you're gonna be able to we get up and put our pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. As compared to like the
Mhm.
CEO of some massive company, you're never gonna see that person more than likely, even if you work there. So I I didn't necessarily plan to come here, but I saw it's weird. From working here when I was younger, I saw what the culture was like, then went to a corporate environment, and I was like, whoa, this is way different. I'm not sure I like that very much. Did it for a while, and then I decided I didn't like it very much, and it's been a good switch, definitely, but never really planned on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Georgia's rule was that all of us had to go away and go work at a company so that we would appreciate the culture of Ratterman when we came back, which
It's a good
I
rule.
definitely did. But
Yeah, it's a good rule.
yeah, yeah, exactly. hmm and so I know, Sherri, you were talking about how you got into CO2 in like the 90s, and that's been like the biggest explosion of, well, that's maybe the wrong word to use, but the biggest growth opportunity, I guess, of departments. Um, that's been a pretty challenging sector recently is CO2.
That's good.
How has that been for you guys? How have you been managing that the past few years?
Um, I'm going to defer to Lucas on this because he's
hmm
more of the CO2 guy than I am. I'm more of the IT side. I mean, we have had challenges for sure, and he can probably speak to it better than I can.
Yeah, I mean, we've had, just like everybody did, what, a year or 2 years ago now, with the massive shortage when Jackson Dome was contaminated and everybody was, you know, scrambling to get CO2. It's definitely been better this year. But that was kind of eye opening for us being in the Midwest. We traditionally don't have a ton of CO2 supply chain issues. So when that hit us, we were like, oh man. And so we have on-site storage at our headquarters, roughly 300 tons. And so we were like, what can we do to bump that? And so we went out and we bought, last year we acquired uh, another 270 tons of storage to kind of be almost doubled our capacity in order to have some redundancy in the supply chain. So in the winter and the late fall when CO2 is abundant, we can buy a bunch of loads, store it here, and hopefully keep it, with as minimal loss as possible until we need it in the spring and the summer when the plants go down and we need that extra supply. So that's just something that we've done. And we got lucky finding those tanks, about 470-ton tanks, and added them to our storage yard. So that's just one thing we're doing. The other thing we're doing is we're trying to find other suppliers, um, and currently we're looking at potentially trying to find a supply of biogas, um, which has been a really interesting process. It's very expensive and probably a little bit prohibitive right now, but in the future, as an alternative source of CO2, it could be a really interesting shift in the industry.
And for anyone that doesn't know what biogas is, I mean, myself included, what can you
Yeah, oh yeah,
elaborate on what that
definitely.
is?
Yeah, so it's pretty gross. It's It's basically the off gas from a landfill, is methane and CO2 and probably some other stuff mixed in. And they essentially capture those gases off of that landfill and then filter it and scrub it, condense it into liquid form, hopefully, and then sell it to distributors like us. But as you can imagine, it's the way it was described to us was that the landfill is kind of like a living, breathing organism almost, because it's just a bunch of little tiny bugs or whatever digesting all the garbage. And so if bad garbage gets thrown into the landfill and it gets digested by the organisms, you'll get bad gas, or you'll get gas that's inconsistent. So it's
Oh,
not perfect yet, and there's a very limited amount of them. But you can kind of
oh
see
wow.
the idea, right? And in theory,
Mm-hmm.
you could take out your local landfill and collect CO2 from it, and therefore you wouldn't have to produce ethanol or ammonia or whatever that the traditional
Mm-hmm.
sources of CO2. It could be a really abundant alternative. You just have to figure out the economics, and that's kind of the tough part right now. Is it's obviously pretty cost prohibitive, and the science isn't quite there. But that's another thing that we're kind of doing at Leonard's is we're trying to at least start finding and start looking at those types of alternative sources, um, to kind of combat what we saw in 2021 and 2022 with the CO2 shortages.
That is so cool. I love it is so neat that you guys are a 60-year-old company and looking at so many new avenues of how to do the same thing that's been done for years, you know? So that's pretty amazing. And have either of you seen a new application with CO2, or I know that cannabis is a big one.
I think that cannabis was probably our most recent large um, boom. Um, we we're starting Leonard's is we're looking at dry ice. I know a lot of people, especially in Gouda and throughout the industry, do dry ice already. It's kind of a natural
Mhm.
selling point with CO2. Just sell it as a solid. So we're looking at that because we're seeing here in Michigan, especially with the auto manufacturers and just manufacturing in general, heavy industrial manufacturing, there's a lot of dry ice blasting, which is becoming a very popular cleaning technique in the manufacturing space. So they take their large industrial molds and they blast it with dry ice, and it leaves no residue, and there's nothing left over. All the stuff just falls off. They clean it and they collect it, and there's no water, no soap, nothing like that. So we've seen that kind of really picking up in the last 2 years with the dry ice blasting. So we're starting to look at getting our own machine for dry ice and hopefully getting into that space in the next year or so. But that's about the only new use that we've seen. Cannabis is a huge one. That took our CO2
Yeah.
division. It doubled it. I mean, you went from selling 300 pounds a month if you're lucky to a restaurant to selling 24 tons a month to one customer, and that's guaranteed. And it was a big
Wow.
shift for us. We went from kind of being a restaurant mini bulk, so to speak, to an actual bulk gas supplier, with the
Wow.
cannabis industry kind of expanding here in Michigan when it went recreational in 2020. It was a big deal for us.
Yeah, and they're pretty much using that for growing. Is that what they're using the CO2 for?
Yeah, I mean they use it for everything.
Yeah.
They use it. It almost reminds me of like McDonald's back in the day when they used to have McDonald's used to use when CO2 was cheap and easily accessible. They would use it to power all their windows and all their everything ran on CO2 because it was the
Whoa.
cheapest thing in their store. And cannabis
Wow.
is kind of like where can we it's not for that reason any like same as McDonald's, but they use it in every application they can. So they use it for just like in food, they use it to sterilize. So if they want to flood a room, so to speak, to get all the bugs out or anything that they don't want living, they'll just literally drench the whole room in CO2 to purge it. And the plants like that, at their early stages because they can breathe that in. They do the opposite of us. So they use
Hmm.
it to purge, they use it to grow, they use it to extract. So if they want to get the oil from the cannabis plant, they can use supercritical CO2 for extraction purposes. So it's and all we really have to do is provide the liquid like we always have, just in much bigger formats. So it was a really good marriage for us when that hit. And that hit 2020. It hit literally as the bill went into effect January 2020, 3 months before COVID, which is when we lost, 98% of our revenue in a snap because we were restaurants only.
Yeah. Right.
Cannabis comes online and we're like, holy crap, we're doing better than we ever have. And we don't even have any customers to sell to, just cannabis grows. So
my gosh.
it was honestly a saving grace. It was really good timing with the state of Michigan to do that in 2020 for us, at least.
Yeah, seriously. And Sherri, I'll start with you on this question, but what is your, talking to you both, it seems like the family of Leonard Syrups is very comfortable diving into new markets. What is your advice to companies in the gas and welding industry or any company that may feel hesitant to dive into new markets? And what's your advice of where they should start?
Ooh, that's a big question.
I can come back to you too.
I guess like anything, just do your research. And, I've never been one that's been afraid to fail, because I always figure if plan A fails, you have 25 letters left in the alphabet. And I just think that if you're too afraid, you're never going to take any risks. But so small risks are always good. I wouldn't say go and invest everything you have in something, but it's always good to plan and research and go for it. I mean, that's what my father's always done. He's an incredible entrepreneur, and he's always been the first one to jump in on any kind of new thing that's come in. And he's very smart. He's, I'd love to ask him like how he makes those decisions. I've never really sat down and asked him, but I think he researches, figures if this is good, I'm just going to take a chance. And you have to have that commitment and that passion. Also, if you don't have that, I think you might have a lesser chance to succeed. But when you are all in and you are passionate and you want it, you're going to give it everything you have, and you're going to, you just don't let yourself think you're not going to succeed. I've got this. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And has there ever been a time where you've jumped in on something and gone, oh, oops, and you kind of had to, use the different letters of the alphabet?
Of course. Absolutely. I mean, for me, it's been more on IT stuff, software packages that maybe I thought were going to be just the bomb and ended up just being a complete failure. One time I tried RFID tags on all of our cylinders, thinking that, we could scan those. And that was a costly thing that I did, and it completely failed.
No.
But instead of being upset about how much money I spent, I let myself cry about it for a day. And then I said, you know what? There's another solution here. And then we went with the next solution. We barcoded, we got a new package, and now everything's good.
Oh,
so
that's perfect.
Everybody fails. That's the other thing. Don't give up just because you fail. You're going to fail, 100% sure, but pick yourself up and pick up the next thing and keep going.
Right. Totally. And I feel like you learned something within that failure. Like I just failed miserably in actually it's in the IT space of, something to do with our website, but it was a big failure. And I sat there and wanted to cry because so much work goes into it. You so much research, prep, whatever. But through that, I now know exactly the questions I need to ask for the next company that we're going to hire, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Lucas, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the most important thing about running a business is taking calculated risks. But I also feel like it's, for Leonard's at least, kind of like Sherri was saying, we've planned to make decisions, but we've made some pretty large decisions just on gut feeling. And I think that that's a real talent and gift that my grandfather, Sherri's dad, has. But I also feel like that's something that everybody can kind of use, right? How often do you think to yourself, man, if I would have just trusted my gut, I would have chose option B, and that would have been, better. Like, oh, if I would have just bought that stock right now, look at it now. And it's like, you only wanted to buy that stock because you like Burger King and like you bought Burger King stock. And that's kind of how my grandpa makes decisions sometimes. And a lot of times your gut's right. And so I would say that that's really good advice for people trying to start a business is if you think you have a good idea and you think that, it's a worthwhile investment, do your research, plan for it, but also don't be afraid to actually take the leap. That's a very important step, and you have to do it. And you find out a lot of times doing it is the best option. So It's something we've done very well. It's funny to hear Sherri say that we plan everything, because sometimes I feel like we just we just jump and we don't really plan, and we plan after, and it works out. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's definitely like she said, without taking those risks, you'll never succeed either. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a balance, but I think as a small business, that's part of the flexibility you have, is you're able to fail, and fail hopefully not so poorly that you're out of business, right? So you're able to take that risk, and you have a little bit more ability to.
Yeah, and you're going to
Yes.
spend a lot of time doing it. So make sure it's something that you love.
Yeah,
and that you really have
totally.
a passion for.
Yeah. I think there's something so this has been my mantra, or whatever you want to call it, for the past year with business, is no matter what, you're going to fail. So take that off the table. You're going to fail no matter what. I think it comes down to outfailing your competition. So if you're going to fail fast. Like, fail and realize, okay, this isn't how I wanted to go. Reconvene, and what's the next step here? And you just keep going through those failures, because every failure makes a little building block to then a successful moment, So, yeah,
I love that.
after my big failure last week, I needed to hear this from both of you. So thank you.
Yeah, you're so right, though. Know when to pull the plug. Don't keep throwing money at something if you know this just isn't working, but you don't want to give up. You have to also know when to give up. Like, this is time now. I need to find a new avenue, because this just isn't working. And I've taken things too far when I just didn't want to give up, and I should have known earlier. But now that's a learning thing too. You kind of say, well, this isn't working. You got to know when to give up.
Yeah. And that is a total skill to develop, though. It's like, it's so hard. There's a book, I think it's called The Dip. It's like when to stick and when to quit, or something. Is like, I don't know. My dad made my sisters and I do book reports on it in middle school and high school. But yeah, it always like sticks in the back of my mind of like, okay, are we taking this too far? Because sometimes you can second guess yourself instead of just committing and going with your gut. So
yeah, definitely.
It's funny how that is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Anything you guys want to touch on regarding Leonard Syrups that I haven't hit? Or your experience within business?
Sherri, anything you want to hit? We touched on the 60th anniversary. That's about the only thing that I thought would have been cool to mention, but we touched on that. So I think an experience.
Are you guys doing anything for the 60th?
We did. Well, every year we have a big kickoff meeting at the beginning of the year to talk about the year. So this year was extra special. We, we always have a food truck, but we did like an extra special gift. We had Carhartt sweatshirts embroidered with our 60th anniversary logo.
Cool.
And different raffle prizes. And then this summer we'll have a employee appreciation day. We do that every year, but I'm trying to get the mayor to come, because I think it'd be kind of fun, just because we've been in the city, like Lucas said, 60 years, we've never moved outside of the city. So I'd like him to come and just give a little speech, and we're going to have live music and a couple of food trucks and a petting zoo, and everyone can bring their family and take a tour of the facility, and just trying to make it extra, extra special for 60 years. Because that's a pretty big, I think about my grandfather almost daily, because he was he reminds me a little bit of your dad. Always happy, always had a smile on his face. Everybody was always happy to see him. He was just that person that I never saw him mad. And I think he passed away when I was maybe 40, and I never saw him mad the whole time of my life, and we worked with him every day, and he was just so happy. So I always think he's probably looking down thinking, dang, you guys did it. You kept it going 60 years,
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I want to look up the stat of how many companies make it to 60 years, because I know it's not many.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have 120 employees now, and when you started, there were 12. That's mind blowing.
Yeah, it is.
Well, cool. Well, I'm so happy that you guys were able to join me on such short notice, and it's been a pleasure getting to, get all the bits of knowledge from both of you. So
thanks for having us. That was fun.
Yeah,
very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Stay up to date with the latest news in the gas and welding industry by clicking on the subscribe button.
And check out one of our other videos to learn more. Find out more about Reliably Ratterman at rmiorder.com.